Welcome to the Heart of Innovation. 60 minutes that could save life and limb, with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by patient advocacy group thewaytomyheart.org in partnership with Cardiovascular System Incorporated's patient advocacy campaign, Take a Stand Against Amputation. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of The Way to My Heart, Kym McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of the Save My Piggies Health Education Series, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. To reduce your risk for vascular diseases and mitigate your risk of disease progression, it's really important to eat healthy. But I'm sure I don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you've heard that a million times from your healthcare provider. But what does it even mean? It is so easy to just shop in the produce section if you want to eat healthy. That's a given. But anywhere else in the supermarket, you might be at risk of being bamboozled. Yes, I said it. Bamboozled by the creative ways in which unhealthy ingredients are hidden in so-called healthy foods. Foods that are considered healthy and labeled as natural contain many harmful chemicals used as food preservatives and flavor enhancers. And to talk about the hidden hazards, we have dietitian Melissa Hooper with us, along with our co-host, Dr. John Phillips, and of course, our guest co-host as always, Nurse Practitioner Kay Smith. If you have any questions about what's on your labels, call us to join the conversation. Here's the number, 1-888-367-5329. 888-367-5329. This is going to be a good show, John.
I think so. As they say, your body is a temple, and so the fuel you put into it should reflect that. So I'm excited, and I think Melissa's hopefully going to share with us a lot of helpful tips to navigate these waters. Yep. How was your week? It seems amazing that another week has come and gone, and now we're in December, and before you know it, it's going to be Christmas, right?
Oh my gosh, this has gone so fast. I have been away with my dad celebrating Thanksgiving week. And then also, as you know, my mom transitioned this year. So we wanted to be away for my parents' first anniversary with my mom in spirit. So we spent the time in San Diego. And what was really great, we went to this place called Cape Ray in Carlsbad. It's a great resort. And I talked to the general manager, Thomas, who said that he literally wants to work with us to make sure that any patient with peripheral artery disease or heart disease or another vascular disease has options on their restaurant menu at the resort. I thought that was really good news.
That's awesome. We talked about this before the show went on air. We spend, like as physicians, right? I spend a lot of time counseling my patients about their medications and risk factors, but we don't spend time, or at least I don't, talking about diet much. And I mean, that's really what we eat all the time, right? And in our Western civilization, we have access to so much food that we can overeat, as a lot of us do. So this is going to be a good show. I'm looking forward to kind of learning more about what not to put in my body, because I try to eat as healthy as possible, but it's hard, right?
So before we jump into the topic of the day, Dr. Phillips, your words of inspiration for the day.
Dr. John Phillips' spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
Mike, it doesn't. I feel like I'm in the Game of Thrones or something for King Joffrey.
Thank you, producer Mike.
Thank you, producer Mike. So I took a quote from Hippocrates, kind of, the father of medicine as it pertains to food. And he said, "Let food be thy medicine shall be thy food." So you are what you eat, basically. And so let's start eating healthy.
I love
right?
it. Dietitian Melissa, what did you think of that quote?
I thought the quote was right on, but I loved the intro to introduce Dr. Phillips.
Mm-hmm. We all love it.
We need to get one for Dietitian Melissa, too.
Exactly. Just everybody gets one.
Maybe with another Scottish flair also for Nurse Practitioner Kay.
Yeah.
We need some bagpipes.
Oh my gosh, that's so appropriate too when you've got like the king and queen of, or the prince and princess of Wales here in the U.S. right now too, right? For Princess Kay, or not Princess Kay, but our Nurse Kay.
That's right. They are visiting, aren't they?
Yeah, they're in Boston, I guess. But anyways, well, I am super excited to be here, and nutrition is definitely my passion. And, it's one of those things that, everybody eats, so everybody thinks they're an expert on it. However, there are a lot of different things that people are not usually aware of, especially the general public. I know in the medical field, we are kind of a little bit more aware of things, but I'm hoping that today we can kind of shed some light on, what's really going on with the food labels. And this is what I like to say. I'm going to give some facts about the nutrition facts label for the food labels. So, and then we can talk about different foods. And obviously this is a discussion, but I definitely want to make sure I try to give the listeners or viewers some tools and some tips on how to actually read the food label, because, and I'm not knocking the marketers, but they're always going to pull out some pieces to try to market on the front of the package. But on the back is where you find the facts. And those facts are regulated by the USDA and the FDA, depending on the food. So I hope this will be really...
It is how amazing. It's so amazing how loosely these marketers can call things natural or call things healthy. Or my favorite is with the oils when they say that they're heart healthy, when they may not be necessarily heart healthy in today's world.
Yeah, and those are actual nutrition claims versus nutrition facts. And so that's where it kind of gets into some of the splitting of the fine hairs on the label, is because, again, most of the general public, and I used to do supermarket tours with a lot of patients who were heart patients. They were recovering from open heart surgeries or have had heart attack, things like that. And also people who were wanting to just learn about nutrition and go through like a weight loss program that I used to help teach. When we would go through the supermarket, that was always one of the most eye-opening classes, is because then they're actually pulling foods off the shelf and we're looking at it and we're really taking a look at the back of the label, where again, those facts are highly regulated. The front of the package is not necessarily as regulated, but it is still regulated. It's just not, for health claims, there's, it's not as loose. It's just some of those things they're defined. But it's not the same as a fact. So it's not going to tell you the exact things that are actually in the product. And if you want that information, that's where you have to go to the back of the package.
So Melissa, let me ask you this.
My favorite today.
Oh, go ahead, Kym. No, I was just going to say, we've got about a minute and a half before break. And what you touched on was 2 points, or I wanted to ask your opinion on. So you're in the supermarket, right? And you see all this organic stuff. What does that mean? I mean, and I know it's more expensive, but I mean, is that better for me than, is an organic apple better for me than a regular apple?
Well, so it's kind of it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. So yes, in terms of not having been produced or grown with any, say, antibiotics or any pesticides, things like that. The organic products, there are, and they've gotten a little tighter on this too. They didn't used to do as much regulation on them as they do now. And literally probably about a year or two before COVID is when they started to get a group together with FDA, where if a company has a food product that they want to say is organic, in order to have that organic label on the front of the package, they do have to submit for this, and they have to go through a review with, the food, FDA, USDA. They have to meet certain criteria to be able to say that on the label. So it is more regulated these days, unless if you go to like a farmer's market, there may or may not be necessarily the same labeling.
And really quickly, the dirty dozen is something that where if you really you want to focus on what's affordable and what's not. Not everything has to be organic. And the dirty dozen is a good way to just be able to say, hey, these, I'm going to spend the money, I'm going to get the organic, and the rest, it's not as important, right?
Yeah, and those are really something that was created for anti-cancer and with the pesticides and things like that. It's, one of those lists that those are fruits and vegetables that are very hard to cleanse if they have not been grown in an organic fashion. So there's still ways you can wash off those pesticides and those chemicals that they're grown in to help fertilize the soil that they're grown in, or if it's tree or whatever. There are ways to do that, but the dirty dozen are the ones that are actually harder to get those off of because they have the different crevices and the actual natural product itself that sometimes people aren't able to clean.
And coming up, we're going to tell you exactly where to find the information on that dirty dozen and so much more. So stay with us.
Leg health can indicate risk for heart attack, stroke, and amputation. If you have leg pain or cramps while walking, get checked for peripheral artery disease, or PAD. PAD is plaque buildup in mainly the leg arteries. Be sure to ask your physician for an ankle brachial index, also called an ABI test, where they use blood pressure cuffs to analyze the blood pressure in your legs. If they discover you have arterial plaque that's limiting blood flow to your feet, medicine and a regimented walking program are frontline treatment. If PAD is in its advanced stages, your physician may schedule a surgical intervention. Minimally invasive tools are available to remove plaque and restore blood flow, including Cardiovascular System's Diamondback 360 atherectomy system, which sands away plaque that is a hard calcium. It's important to discuss all options with your physician, and if told you have no options, get a second opinion. Take a stand against amputation. For more information, go to standagainsamputation.com. That's standagainsamputation.com.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking about the hidden hazards in so-called healthy foods. Before the break, we were talking with dietitian Melissa. We also have our host, Dr. John Phillips here, and also nurse practitioner Kay Smith as our guest co-host. But we mentioned the Dirty Dozen, and there's a website. Go ahead and mark this down, ewg.org. That's ewg.org. And they have the shopper's guide to pesticides in produce. And so when we talk about the Dirty Dozen, there are ones that are more likely that you're going to want to buy something that's organic because they have the most pesticides. Number 1, strawberries, 2, spinach, 3, kale, collard and mustard greens, 4, nectarines, 5, apples, 6, grapes, and it goes on and on. And dietitian Melissa, these ones, it just means that it's a lot harder to clean these pesticides off, correct?
Correct. Yes. And we kind of had a little conversation about this too during the break, but there are some fruit and vegetable or produce washes that you can use that are also organic and soluble. So they're not going to have a lot of chemicals in them, but you can use those to rinse off the chemicals that these other Dirty Dozen vegetables and fruits are grown with. It's just harder to get them cleaner because of the way they're actually just naturally produced in terms of like if there's a lot of seeds or if there's like with lettuce, you got a lot of grooves in between the lettuce leaves that things can hide in there. And it can be bugs. It can also be pesticides. It can be residue from what's left over with whatever they were grown in or on. So those are why those are on the Dirty Dozen list. But yeah, those would be ones if you want to splurge and get something organic, those would probably be your best ones to do.
So let's shift gears here a little bit. And I've started doing this of late, kind of reading the labels on what I buy. So just off the top of my head, I eat a lot of peanut butter. I like the Mediterranean diet and using kind of nuts as my proteins. So I bought I bought natural peanut butter. And then I got it home and I looked at the back of it and I'm like, man, there's a lot of stuff in here other than peanuts. And then I went and kind of saw that there's actually the true natural peanut butter, which is just, I think, peanuts and maybe salt. So walk us through that. Like, do we get hooked on the word natural and then we take it home and it's not really natural, or just explain it? Help me, please.
Yeah. So this is a really great question because you're not alone. And I mean, you're very educated as a physician, but think about the average consumer who doesn't have that background at all and is looking at those labels. So it is easy to get bamboozled, as Kym said, when they're saying natural, they're saying that this is, it's a natural peanut butter. It's not something that's an altered, product that's the main product for that, peanut butter. It's not a fake peanut. For lack of a better word. So that's kind of more of a claim than it is an actual fact. Again, the facts are very regulated and they're on the back of the package. But to your point, a lot of these products, and again, this is why I feel like it's important for people to at least learn some of the basics on how to read a food label. Because when you turn the label over and you look on the back, you're going to see where they've added in sugars or salts or even added in other fats to it. And again, if you want something actually very natural for a peanut butter, you can go to some of the stores that will have peanuts and you can have them grind up just peanuts into peanut butter on the spot in the store. Really? That's another thing you can do. And you can pick other kinds of nuts. It doesn't just have to be peanuts. It could be almonds. It could be cashews. It's whatever peanuts they have available. I don't want to promote specific stores on the show, but more of your natural food stores will do that. And it's an easy thing to do. It doesn't cost to do that. They usually will grind them up for free, but you are going to pay for whatever nut it is by the pound of whatever it is. But then,
Dietitian Melissa, I also see that with the nut milks. Mm-hmm. I thought I was getting just naturally. How hard is it for almonds and water? And so many of these so-called nut milks have all kinds of other ingredients in it that I can't even pronounce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some of those can be some of the ones that are like preservatives, obviously getting something from farm to table, whether it's an almond that's grown on a tree and is being processed into almond milk or, oats are being, processed and put into an oat milk. There are some ingredients that do have to be there in order for it to be shelf stable. So again, that can be a little misleading for the average consumer to see that and think, what's the big deal? I can't, and, sometimes these are things you can actually make at home too, but you have to keep in mind, if you're going to buy something that is already, processed and out of its natural state of how it is actually grown, there's going to be a little bit more involved unless it is, something that you don't mind having it like the peanut butter, almond butter, something like that, where you're going to grind it up and you're going to take it home in its natural state. And it doesn't necessarily have to have the preservatives because you may be eating it sooner than what it would be on a regular brand of peanut butter.
So Melissa, walk us through how you read a label, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what are like three things that go through your head when you're looking at it as to whether or not you should buy brand X or brand Y with respect to their nutritional value?
Mm-hmm. So for me as a registered dietitian, and even as a personal consumer, I have in the most recent year tried to reduce my own added sugars. And I'll be honest, even as a dietitian in the year 2022, it is still very difficult to find foods that are just natural without any added sugars, salts, or added fats, or, any preservatives added to it. And, of course, I'm not going to grow my own peanuts. So if I want peanut butter, I'm just like the rest of you. I'm going to have to go to the store and buy it. So I try to look over, I turn the label over. And for me specifically, I will look at what's the added ingredients besides what we know goes into peanut butter. I'm just going back to this example, and this is anything really for this matter. I look at how many carbohydrates, and then I look at the type of carbohydrate that is in it. I want to know, is that carbohydrate all just natural from the actual food that is comprising this product that I'm buying? Or has there been added sugars? Have there been added sugar sweeteners? And that will be listed as a sugar alcohol. And for me, I'm not a big fan of the sugar alcohols either, but for a lot of my diabetic patients and clients, that is a big component. So they know that they can have that versus a product that has actual sugar added. So, and then I want to look at, okay, well, if it's a sugar, alternative, what kind is it? That's when you go into the ingredient label and you're going to, on the ingredients section, and you're going to say, hey, what is it? I mean, I personally have I don't like the equals, the sweet and lows. Those are not my fan. I like to go for monk fruit, stevia, something more like that. It's a more natural product. Even coconut sugar is still going to have some carbs in it. It's not going to be quite the same. It still will have a glycemic effect, more so than monk fruit and stevia. But those are the things that I would look at. And then what's the type of fat that's in there? And again, these are things that are highly regulated. So all the food manufacturers, I should say, have to follow a very standard regulated term, definition for this. So they have to list out how much fat is in there. And this is all per serving. So they have to list out how much fat and what the fat is. The type of fat has now been deemed more important than the actual amount of fat. And this is all changed around 2021. So as of July 2021, all of the major manufacturers now have an updated style of presenting the nutrition facts that all should be the same. So they will be listing out if the fat is a saturated fat, or if it's they'll also list the cholesterol. Those things are going to be in the panel on the back with the facts.
So no pun intended, but that's a lot to digest. We're going to go to break here in a few seconds. And I think when we come back, maybe we can continue this conversation. Kym, is that okay with you? You're the boss, All right, good. Kym said it's okay. So stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. Thanks.
3 years ago, my symptoms started with leg pain and leg cramps while walking.
Me too, with a tightness in my calves.
Well, do you know, my doctor thought that my leg cramps were a side effect of the statin he prescribed me.
Well, my doctor just brushed them off as another symptom of old age.
Mine thought the pain was radiating from my spine.
My doctor blamed my neuropathy on diabetes until I got a wound on my foot that just wouldn't heal.
Yeah, it turns out we all have peripheral artery disease, also known as PAD.
It's plaque buildup mainly in the leg arteries causing poor circulation.
For me, the diagnosis came too late and I lost my leg, but that does not have to happen to you.
No, it does not, because there are treatment options available if you're diagnosed early enough.
PAD, peripheral artery disease. If you've been experiencing leg pain, leg cramps, or neuropathy when walking, and your doctor isn't hearing you, we are. We are the Way to My Heart, the largest support network for peripheral artery disease patients, and we want to help you get back on your feet again. Visit our website at thewaytomyheart.org or call our Leg Saver hotline, 415-320-7138. Your life and limb could depend on it.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for continuing to join us. This has been a fantastic show. I mean, obviously, we're learning a lot about what we put in our bodies. And kind of during the break, we were just discussing, at least for me, there are certain foods that I think are healthy that I try to eat. Like, for example, a lot of these protein bars. And I started looking at these labels, and and to Melissa's point, I feel like there's added carbohydrates and added sugars that I didn't think were there. So, Melissa, give us an idea of there are certain foods that people think that they're eating that are healthy when in fact they may not be as healthy as we thought they were. What kind of group should we stay away from? And again, in my situation, I find like it's these protein bars or these like energy bars that I think are good for me, but when I get into the nitty gritty of them, I'm not sure that they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is actually another really great question because, in fact, and just to start off this answer, there's a new recommendation that they're working on with the FDA on the terminology healthy. So, outside of the U.S., I'm not 100% sure if they have any regulations on using the word healthy, but that is something that they're looking at really defining in the U.S. So it's on its second round right now on what they're working on. So eventually you probably will see some specific definition on what manufacturers can use when they use the word healthy on a package. But for now, we still have to eat between now and then. So, what do we do? So, obviously if you're grabbing a bag of Cheetos that we all know, or, and I'm not trying to, pick on a specific food, but any, potato chip type style, snack food, we know those are probably not going to be healthy. But to your point, when you're looking at a protein bar or a protein powder or something that you would think is kind of a natural food store, that it would obviously be a healthy product, but not all of them are. They may have only changed one ingredient from a saturated fat to a monounsaturated fat ingredient, and now they can say it's healthy. Well, technically, yeah, they can say it's healthy because it does have that, if that's one of the main ingredients in their product, they can say it's a healthy product, but there's no regulation on that right now. So I usually like to say it's healthier. It's a step in the right direction. It's not necessarily going to mean that that particular product is actually a healthy product. So what do we do? So if you let's say you're looking at a protein bar, then obviously I would always say you have to look at the back of the product. You have to look at that nutrition facts label. How many calories are in there? I mean, if there's maybe 150 to 250 calories in that bar, then that's, depending on who you are. If you're a small petite female versus a 6 foot larger man, that might not be anything but a snack, but if it's, 350 or 400 calories in the bar, that might actually be a meal replacement for someone who's a petite, person. So where are those calories coming from? So that's what we have to look at. Are there carbohydrates? Are the carbohydrates mostly sugar? So if there's maybe 30 carbohydrates total in that product, and then if it shows there's the sugars, like if it'll either say sugars or added sugars, either one of them, those are added sugars. So the sugars, if there's maybe 20 grams of sugars, then that 2/3 of that product's carbohydrate is coming from a sugar. It's not a natural product like a fruit or an oat that might have been added into it, because oats are going to naturally have carbohydrate. Fruits are going to have natural carbohydrates. But anytime it says sugars, those are added sugars where they're literally pouring in.
Okay, so real quick, just break that down for the listeners. Carbohydrates are sugars, right? Mm-hmm. And then that's the umbrella. And then underneath it are sugars and what else? So you do not want, what percentage of your carbohydrates do you not want to be sugar? Like what's a good, ratio?
Mm-hmm. So, this is kind of a blanket statement. If someone's a diabetic, they're going to want to have a little tightened down even further. But let's just give an example of the total carbohydrates in that serving for that product says 30 grams. Then I personally would like to recommend no more than maybe 10 of those grams or less to be coming from sugars, like added sugars. Now, there may be natural sugars that are in there, and, all carbs are not bad. Carbs, that's our body's main source of fuel. It's our brain's main source of fuel. So we have to have some carbohydrates. But again, if you're trying to, reduce the amount of added sugars, look on that label and see where it says added sugars. And if it has any added sugar alternatives, they will list that usually as a sugar alcohol. That's what it's called. So I would recommend, if there's just as a rule of thumb, if there's 30 grams total, then you'd want to keep that to about 10 grams for your added sugar or less. But if you see 20 grams, or if most of the carbs in that is coming from sugars, you might as well just be eating a candy bar for that matter.
Could I mention something, Melissa?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm a type 1 diabetic. Mm-hmm. I'm also allergic to sulfides. So I tend to make everything from scratch because then I know what's going into it and what's not going into it. But I really struggle these days with these adverts that are all over the UK TV. I presume they're on American TV as well. And they've now got vegetarian butchers.
Vegetative what? I'm sorry.
Vegetarian butchers.
Butchers. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're making chicken nuggets, hot dogs, and they're vegetarian chicken nuggets and vegetarian hot dogs. And it's just
so basically it's a plant. It's not to interrupt you, but it's a plant meat. It's a plant. Okay, gotcha.
Plant-based, and they call it vegetarian butchers. And they charge a fortune for them. And they're basically made out of soy, which means that the carbohydrates, etc., are going to be through the roof. And I also, this business where you eat low fat, because low fat normally means high sugar, because to compensate for the fact that there's low fat, they put extra sugar into it. So I have a lot of the advertisement, I think, needs to be readjusted. I don't know if you're having vegetarian butchers over in the UK, the USA, but we're just about up to there with the vegetarian butchers and the vegetarian chicken nuggets. If it's vegetarian.
And on that note, because that is such a loaded question, it's a really good point from Nurse Practitioner Kay. I'd really like to dive into that when we get back from break, so stay with us. Medical Notepad brought to you by Cardiovascular Systems Incorporated's patient advocacy campaign, Take a Stand Against Amputation, and The Way to My Heart. This week, American Endovascular's interventional radiologist, Dr. John Runback, talks about an advanced technique to prevent amputation.
Hi, my name is Dr. John Runback for American Endovascular and Amputation Prevention. Pedal loop angioplasty is a technique whereby we open up the arteries at the very bottom of the blood supply into the leg. And the pedal loop is actually the artery inside the foot, which supplies blood supply out to the digits, where you may often get ulceration or amputation. What patients need to realize, which is extremely important, is that many doctors will open the arteries down to the knee or even down to the artery, down to the ankle, but not open the arteries below the ankle within the pedal loop, which may be necessary to provide adequate blood flow for healing. Therefore, it's important, if you had a prior procedure and still have non-healing wounds, that you see an expert who is able to treat disease within the pedal loop, restore flow directly to the wounds.
That was American Endovascular interventional radiologist Dr. John Runback with this week's Medical Notepad. Remember, don't act on any advice or information offered in this series without the explicit consent of your own healthcare provider. For more information on peripheral artery disease, go to standagainstamputation.com. And for advocacy, go to thewaytomyheart.org.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the hidden hazards in so-called healthy foods. And before the break, Nurse Practitioner Kay was talking about the so-called vegetarian or vegetable butchers, a lot of those so-called plant-based products. And we wanted to get to Dietitian Melissa to talk to us about the hidden hazards in those plant-based foods that are so-called healthy. Melissa?
Well, that was actually a really great question because it's gained a lot of popularity with these meatless meats that have really kind of come to the mainstream market in the last few years. And obviously, you know, plant-based diets are healthy if they are natural products. But the issue with the meatless meats is that they are genetically modified meats. And they are also a lot of them have a soy base for creating that product. So what's now people have been finding out is that it's linked to some of the pesticides that the soybeans are grown with, and that there is not only a genetic modified portion to the product, but now we have, these pesticides that include things like Roundup that are being included into the ingredients and are linked to causing cancer. I know that there's some lawsuits out there now about this. So, I don't necessarily think that's the way to go. If you're wanting to do something that's more plant-based, you probably want to just stick to natural products versus the genetically modified that are created versus grown or are more on a natural spectrum of food.
Yeah. Can I throw out there that the low-fat yogurts, everything being low-fat, about 20, 30 years ago, both governments, every government said we all had to eat low-fat. And now we've got an epidemic of diabetes. Do you think the two of them are linked?
Well, yeah, back in like the 80s and the 90s, I don't know if you guys remember that era.
I do.
I may be dating myself here, but a lot of the big push was low fat. Well, to replace the fat for flavor, because flavor is usually found in a lot of fat, what they would do is they would add in either sugars or salts to replace the fat. So it still had flavor, and also helped with the shelf stability of the product. So it would last on the shelf for a few weeks and be able to take it home and still eat the product. So, that is definitely a hidden culprit, especially for people who were either diabetic or pre-diabetic and didn't know it. They may have been eating these products, these cookies. I know there was a specific brand. I don't want to name them on here, but I know even me and my mother, when I was growing up, we used to eat them all the time, and we thought they were wonderful, tasted great, but it had a lot of sugar. So if a diabetic was eating that way, or someone pre-diabetic eating that way, that could be something that they thought they were doing good based off of the front of the package, like, hey, this is, low fat, but may not have known to look for certain things on the back of the package with the actual nutrition facts and find out, hey, this is.
I think we've talked a lot about sugar already. I want to go back to the plant-based foods because I think we get a lot more of our questions about that. And I'd love to know some of the red flags that you can give to people so that as they are looking for these plant-based products, that they're going to know. For example, I got these burgers from Akua, AKUA, and it's kelp, it's a kelp burger, but on that versus, let's say, and I am going to mention names, versus, let's say, the Beyond Burgers, Beyond Meats, I could actually read the ingredients on the label. I knew what each one was. And I'm wondering if that's a key indicator, or if there are ingredients that we maybe can't pronounce on some of these other ones that we should red flag.
Now, that's an excellent point. That was one of the goals for the updated U.S. label, I should say, the U.S. food label, is that they were trying to make the ingredients more readable, that like common words, instead of using the chemical name for them or the scientific name for them. There are still a lot of packages, though, that will use a scientific name, based off of the chemical structure of what that product is that they've got in there as an ingredient. But yeah, the less ingredients is usually going to be a key that this is a more natural product. It's not been, had a lot of other ingredients added to for flavor or for preservatives or things like that. And to your point, as a dietitian, I really don't like to push soy products just because of the impact that it can have on hormones. And this is not just for women with breast cancer, but it can affect hormones for men as well. So these can become hormone interferences and can cause, other problems down the road if someone's just using that particular product for a long term as a staple, like a milk product, like we talked about, in the break about, the soy milks, things like that. But that would be something that if somebody has a genetic risk in their family, I would say probably stay away from the soy altogether. But there are some alternative products that I am a big fan of. And one of them is pea protein. It's just like the green pea that you find like in like the little round pea that's in the green bean or the string bean. That is actually something that they don't have any research, at least at this point, showing that there's any harm in that. But they will pulverize that pea into a powder. And then you will find a lot of times in the protein bars and things like that, they will add in pea protein. In fact, I just ate one this morning for breakfast that
you don't look any worse for the wear.
Yeah. How does that taste? Is it too early to eat peas like that?
Yeah,
peas have carbohydrates as well.
You don't really taste the pea, but I mean, it does have, it's got a protein flavor to it, but even just alone, you're going to get protein from that. If you're eating it as part of, like a vegetable for one of your main courses or whatever, you will get protein from that pea. But a lot of people don't know that. And this was something that came out probably about 5 or 6 years ago. It was out in like the industry shows, the trade shows. And now it's become a lot more mainstream to the point that even some of these newer products, newer chefs, some restaurants, they're already starting to incorporate in the pea protein, which gives you a lot of protein. It's plant-based. It's not got a hormone interference. And it really doesn't change the flavor too much if once they're adding that in with other natural ingredients into a dish or like a power.
Is it still healthy when it gets processed into cheese? What about some of the pea protein cheese, the nut cheeses? Are those okay?
Well, cheese in and of itself, if it's a natural cheese and, not an artificially created cheese, it will also have protein in it, just based off of the way it's made. But, if they're using pea protein to actually fortify it and give it more protein, then yeah, it should be fine. But I mean, again, this is where you have to look at the ingredients. And, I really can't stress that enough to people. It's like, we got to look at the facts. And then once you see what's actually in there, then look in the ingredient list and see
Melissa,
what's the basis of that.
Are you telling me that those slices of cheese that are perfect squares and individually wrapped, that's not real cheese?
Plastic cheese, John. Plastic cheese.
Yeah,
you're bursting my bubble like here.
Buzzkill.
Darn, I know, right?
I'll give you a bigger
because we buy cashew milk cheese, buy pea protein cheese.
How can you eat so many nuts in America? They're full of carbohydrates and calories.
Well, that's the magic of America. So we have a way to add in some extra carbs along the way.
Peanut butter.
Well, no, and I will say this, if you are getting a natural peanut butter, here's another good rule of thumb. If they're natural and don't have a lot of the preservatives, you'll see a layer of oil on the top of the peanut butter in the jar. And that's actually when you'll have to stir it up. And what I usually do when I get that is you just want to put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds or so. So it just softens it up so you can stir that oil back in. And all that is it's the most natural shelf pre-made peanut butter you'll find. Other than just
right here on
in the store.
The Heart of Innovation. We will have more with Dietitian Melissa, so stay with us.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is a little bit of a speed round. The show is all about the hidden hazards in healthy foods. So I want to see if Dietitian Melissa has a little bit of a speed round of some red flags that you can look for on your labels.
Yes, absolutely. So again, don't be deceived by the marketing that's on the front of the package. It may be true, but it may not tell the whole story. So always turn the package over and look at the facts on the back. You want to start with looking at the type of fat that's in there and see if it's mostly a saturated fat, that's the total amount of the grams of fat in that product, then that's an animal-based product, which may or may not be bad. But if you're watching cholesterol and your saturated fats, you might want to pick another product that's not so high in the saturated fat and also cholesterol. The other thing I would say is to look at the total carbohydrates and again, check where those carbohydrates are coming from. And underneath the carbohydrates, if the majority of those carbohydrates total are coming from an added sugar, then again, this is a high sugar product. You will want to pick another product if you're watching your blood, your blood glucoses, or if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic. And also, we didn't really talk about salt as much on this so far, but you want to look and see about the sodium too. And the sodium can, be hidden item as well. So if it's, if the actual food serving for that package of product is over 250 milligrams of sodium for that serving, I would say you're starting to get into a little bit of a higher range of sodium. So keep it to about 250 milligrams or less on a serving. And then that will help you keep within the 2,000 milligrams that is recommended per day. So again, it's the fats, it's the carbohydrates, and it's the salts. A lot of these things can be used for preservatives and flavoring, and that's where we can kind of go awry.
How about thickeners?
So thickeners, typically I wouldn't necessarily call them thickeners. We actually call them binders in the food world, but because there's some ingredients that won't mix and stay together without the binders. So some of them are necessary, and then some of them are not necessarily necessary. They may be, added for other flavorings and flavor enhancers as well. So again, to do that in a few minutes would be hard to go through a list of those, but that is definitely one of the other things to take a look at. And it
are they okay?
The ingredients.
Okay?
Most of them are, if they're a natural product, because there are some natural binders. And here's another rule of thumb. So the ingredient list, they're going to list them by weight in the product. So the amount of weight of that product is going to be coming from about the first 3 to 5 ingredients. So if the first couple ingredients in there are a sugar, a salt, or a fat, then you can know that that product is probably not the healthiest it could possibly be. There are some, if it's saying, you just want to make sure that there's not a lot of fat and salt or sugars in those first few ingredients. That was a lot to take in.
It is a lot. And I just want to close out. We have about a minute left. And Dr. Phillips and so many other doctors out there, they talk about the Mediterranean diet. Anything that we should worry about in terms of the Mediterranean diet as you're searching for those good Mediterranean diet foods, and you don't want any hidden hazards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say your olive oils, your avocado oils. We used to recommend canola oil. We do not recommend that at all anymore.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Dietitian Melissa. Everyone, thank you for joining us on the show. And we will see you again next week for the Heart of Innovation. Go to theheartofinnovation.org for this show and more.
Have a great week, everyone.
You've been listening to The Heart of Innovation with Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips. Our mission is to help patients live a better quality of life through comprehensive education, real-time support, and high-touch advocacy in partnership with thewaytomyheart.org and Take a Stand Against Amputation. Our purpose is to reduce the 1.5 million heart attacks and strokes and nearly 200,000 amputations annually. For more information regarding topics you've heard discussed on today's program, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. The Heart of Innovation is for educational and informational purposes only, and advice and views shared are not a substitute for medical advice from your own supervising physician. Do not act on any information provided in this show without the explicit consent from your own healthcare team. If you think you are having a medical emergency, call your local emergency number or go to the nearest hospital or emergency room.